started. Today's topic is interval toilet training. Myself and Francine Zeltzer are presenting this topic. So I will talk more about who we are. But before that, I just wanted to talk a little bit about Manhattan Psychology Group. We've been established since 2011, and since then we've become a multidisciplinary team of over 200 psychologists, neuropsychologists, BCBAs, and special education teachers. We provide wraparound care, including psychological services, testing, ABA, and educational services. On the screen, you can see all of the different therapies that we do provide. And that goes for virtual sessions, in person, in our center on the Upper West Side in Manhattan, also in the greater New York City metro area across all 5 boroughs. So we have clients all over in all different settings: home, school, clinic, community. We also have social skills groups. So just wanted to share a little bit of who we reach out to. We have private pay clients, commercial insurance, ABA clients, and then Department of Ed students who are receiving services, ABA and educational services with us, usually with board certified behavior analysts, also special education teachers for those. And Lakin, our recruiting specialist, is going to talk more about the opportunities with Manhattan Psychology Group if you're interested. So stay tuned, hang out for a little bit after the webinar, and Lakin will talk to those of you who are interested. Our mission is to provide multidisciplinary integrated support for individuals and their families who experience various challenges, psychological, developmental, and educational challenges. And our vision is to create a future where individuals and their families feel empowered, connected, and supported. Before we move on, I just want to remind all of you that this is a CEU event. So I'm going to be posting the link to the survey at the end of the event after the second code. So it's important that you stay till the end and that you've received the link to the survey so that you get your certificate. So please make sure to check the chat for the survey link. There are going to be 2 codes embedded into the presentation. So it's important that you guys jot down these codes. Those are important for your certificate, okay? I also posted the link to our events so that you can see the previous recordings and you can register for upcoming events. So please stay connected and register for our monthly webinars. I'm going to introduce Francine. She is a psychologist and also the clinical director of psychological services at MPG. She specializes in child and adolescent development, behavior management, family counseling, effective parenting strategies, and also consultation and educational advocacy. She's published several articles on toilet training specifically, and she is considered an expert in the field. Francine.
All right. Hi, everyone. Good evening. It's so good to be here with Kristen. So Kristen is a BCBA and an LBA. She's a clinical supervisor here at MPG, and she has over 10 years of experience toilet training children of all ages. Kristen specializes in verbal behavior intervention and tutoring through ABA. And we are both really excited to be teaching you guys tonight about toilet training.
Thank you so much, Francine. All right. So a little bit about what you're going to get from today's webinar. You're going to be able to identify when a child is ready to be toilet trained, identify environmental changes that you will need to make, how to use a toileting schedule effectively, exploring effective toileting strategies, understanding how to use reinforcement with toileting, and then also troubleshooting any barriers to potty training. And then lastly, planning to fade out of that schedule so that the child's not always dependent on an interval schedule. So how do we know that they're ready? There are 2 things that we're looking at. First are the physical indicators. So a child is physically ready when they're no longer releasing drips in their diaper, right? So when they're actually urinating a decent amount and they're staying dry for certain periods of time, and that it's not just that they're urinating little bits, right? So you'll see that the diaper fills up and you can tell that the diaper is full. This shows us that they're physically ready to start toilet training. Another physical indicator and a behavior that you could observe is that a child is learning to pull up and down their own pants and that they're acquiring the skill. I put this in asterisks because it is not a requirement for toilet training. It's just something we might notice and say, hey, they're really ready. They're even, pulling up and down their own pants. But really that first arrow, the first physical indicator is really what I look for when I'm determining if a child is ready.
Absolutely. And that first indicator really suggests that they have bladder control. So that shows that they're able to hold in long enough so that they're able to be potty trained. It's important to note that neurotypical children will typically show readiness between 18 months and 3 years of age. But some of the behavioral indicators for all children, and remember, every child is different, is that they don't avoid the toilet or the bathroom. So there's no significant fear of going into the bathroom. They're interested in the toilet. We want to actually work on prerequisite skills before we start potty training. So sitting on the toilet and tolerating sitting on the toilet is a prerequisite before actual toilet training. So if a child is fearful of sitting on the toilet or unable to sit on the toilet, that's something you want to practice and train prior to starting potty training. Lastly, again, this one also has an asterisk, a child's acknowledgement or awareness of being wet or uncomfortable can be an indicator, but it's not necessary for that to occur before you start training.
This is our first poll question. The question is, a child must show discomfort when being wet before initiating toilet training. So what do you think? Is that true or false? I'm going to wait until about 80% of you respond. All right, we're there. So 78% of the audience said that this is false. They don't need to show discomfort when they're wet in order to initiate toilet training. Okay, and that's exactly what Francine just mentioned on the previous slide. So great job.
All right, so why are we potty training children? So there are many benefits to potty training or toilet training, and the number one being increasing the child's independence. We want to promote independence in children, of children of all ages, and many children need this skill of toilet training in order to attend certain schools for school placement, to participate in certain activities or extracurriculars, and also to be able to participate in various social opportunities, to go to different play places, to go out into the community. Having the skill of knowing how to use the toilet will allow children to access many more opportunities and events. And then there are benefits also to the parents. Parents that have children who are able to use the toilet no longer have to change diapers, which takes a lot of time and requires certain environments so that it's clean enough to change a diaper. And also there are significant financial benefits where families are saving over $1,000 a year because they're no longer purchasing diapers or pull-ups.
So what is the terminal goal for toileting? Really, we want children to be able to utilize the bathroom during waking hours without a schedule, right? That's one of the first terminal goals. We also would want the child to utilize the bathroom during the night without the use of an interval schedule. And you can break down what your goal for your client or child would be, and these are just some of them. The child will flush and wash hands without adult prompts. And then the child will learn to wipe themselves. That's also part of toileting. And all of these need to be met in order for the terminal goal to be met. The child will learn to enter the bathroom, remove their clothes, and dress themselves without adult prompts. So it's fine during instruction if a child needs support throughout all of these, but the goal should be that the child can do 1 through 5 to be considered completely toilet trained. And also remember age appropriateness, reminding kids to use the bathroom during natural transitions is okay. That doesn't mean that they're not toilet trained. That just means that they're kids and we're reminding them to use the bathroom. Some parents also like to just keep those visuals in the bathroom for washing hands, and that's okay. But really we want to make sure that the child is dry during the day and eventually also during the night, which comes secondary. But these are really all the components to the terminal goal.
And as you know, when you're writing terminal goals, you're looking at them as these long-term objectives and you're breaking them down into benchmarks or short-term objectives. So when working on a toileting goal, the long-term objective will look something like the client will use the bathroom for urination during waking hours on a 2-hour schedule with 0 accidents across 3 consecutive days. So that means that with every 2 hours, they're not having an accident, and for 3 days that they're accident free. But how do we get to those full 2 hours? And that would be those short-term objectives or those benchmarks. So we're going to start with, let's say, a 15-minute interval or 30, and then we're going to increase to 30, 45 minutes, an hour to an hour and a half, and then an hour and a half to 2 hours. And remember, this is just an example of what the goal would look like. And what we're going to talk about later is how do we set goals that are individual to the children that we're trying to toilet train. So one child, it might be starting with a 15-minute interval, and another might be 5, and another might be 20, depending on our baseline data. So that's something we're going to talk about a little later. Actually, we're going to talk about it now. Okay,
Great.
so go ahead.
Okay. Do you want to do this one, Francine?
Sure. So when we talk about baseline data, we want to get a better understanding of how often is the child going to the bathroom? What is their frequency of urination? And that becomes that individual child's trend. Some children tend to urinate often, while others tend to urinate quite infrequently. So what we want to do initially is whoever's collecting the baseline data, whether it be the parent or the therapist, we want them to have a data sheet. And we want them to collect data over 3 consecutive days, because by using 3 consecutive days, we're able to identify trends over time and determine whether the child's bathrooming behavior is an outlier or that's their typical trend. What we want to do during baseline is we want to leave them in their diaper and allow them to go about their daily activities. But every 30 minutes, we want to check them to determine whether or not they're wet or dry. So that could be something as simple as squeezing the diaper to determine if the diaper's wet or dry. Now, if it is wet, we would want to indicate that it's wet, and we would want to change the child's diaper, even if the diaper is just a little bit wet. That way we're able to see when the diaper becomes wet again. And then the BCBA will analyze the therapist, whoever's working with the child and the family, they'll analyze the baseline data to determine the frequency of urination. And we're also able to see, is the diaper filling up at the time when the diaper is wet? And then from the time the diaper is wet, how long does it take until the diaper is wet again? If we can't do the 3 consecutive days, we could use individual sessions to collect data. And really, we're just looking at the frequency and interval data.
Perfect. So spontaneous bathroom initiation analysis. That sounds like a mouthful. So we want to know when we're looking at a data sheet and the child has started a toilet training schedule, and we're going to get to that slide shortly. But the child has started on interval training and the child begins to spontaneously visit the bathroom and sit on the toilet and have some successes. We want to record those moments, and I'm going to show that to you on the data sheet, because when we see that the frequency of spontaneous bathroom visits occur, we can also make a decision to increase the interval durations, so that the child doesn't become dependent on our interval. So this will all make sense once I show you that data sheet. But I just wanted to make it clear that we have these short-term objectives, like Francine said, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour. However, we can also make decisions based on the child's behavior, and they might teach us when they're ready to move on based on their spontaneous visit to the bathroom. And that's also where reinforcement comes in. So we're going to get to all of that right now.
I think one of the biggest surprises that I have found is that many parents are shocked by how infrequently their child is urinating when we're, actually monitoring the data, because they just assume because that whenever they check the diaper is wet, that the child is urinating all day. But with the checks, interestingly, they find that they're not urinating as frequently as they would think. So we talk about common myths. Some of these common myths that parents and therapists tend to believe is that the child needs to be aware of themselves either being wet or having an accident. And that's not actually true. Child awareness is not something that we could reliably observe or determine, and it's not crucial or important for successful toilet training. So we can actually, in fact, train a child who may not be aware that they're wet or may not be aware that they're having an accident. Another myth that we often hear is that the child is not uncomfortable when they're wet, so they must not be ready, or they don't really seem ready, they're not interested. And while it is helpful for them to have that discomfort when they're wet, it is definitely not critical or necessary, because we're teaching them a life skill. So we're teaching them the skill of what the correct response should be, and then we're reinforcing that newly learned skill of going on the toilet. And when we provide reinforcement, we know that we're likely to see an increase in the new behavior that's being reinforced. Accidents will occur, and that is completely normal. And that's why the data that we're collecting is so important to guide our decision making during the toilet training intervention. Some of the things, go ahead.
I was going to talk about the environmental changes. If a child hasn't had success in the past, and they've tried toilet training with another therapist, or the parents have tried, you might want to consider keeping the child close to the toilet during the beginning phases of toilet training. So there might be like a small area of the hallway where you can put some toys or a table with art activities, so that the child has a reason to stay very close to the bathroom. And that's to plan for responses to accidents, and you can catch those accidents faster and get them into the bathroom. In my personal experience, I've done a lot of this with really big bathrooms. Like when I work in schools and there's a handicapped bathroom, we've sometimes even put a desk in the bathroom for kids who are older, who haven't had success, and we need to really get that child toilet trained. We've reverted to, getting toys and desk and schoolwork in the actual bathroom setting. It's not necessary for every single child that you're going to toilet train, but definitely think about how are you going to consequate accidents as fast as possible, and how are you going to teach this new skill that in the past hasn't been successfully taught, or maybe instructional history has kind of interfered with their learning in this area. So
I want to add to that also, that sometimes parents ask, should I bring the potty or should I bring the toilet out into the playroom? And Kristen and I were talking about this a lot before the training, that the answer to that is no, right? Whenever possible, we want to train the child in the bathroom. We want to bring the child to the bathroom, not the bathroom to the child.
So yeah, we're bringing the child into the bathroom. It's better to have the child near the bathroom than bring the small potty to the child in their playroom or their bedroom. That's not really teaching them the steps of being toilet trained. If the child is small and cannot reach the toilet, you want to have a step stool so that they're as independent as possible. They're stepping up, they're getting to the toilet. They don't rely on an adult picking them up and putting them onto the toilet. That could really interfere with learning, because if they've never actually themselves stood in front of a toilet and sat down independently, then they don't have that skill of knowing how to get onto the toilet. So that step stool is super important for those small kiddos. It's easiest to start during the summer months, especially us who live in New York, when it's really cold and the child has a lot of accidents and they're going to school. It's kind of hard for teachers and staff to change sneakers and socks and big bulky clothing. And so you want to try to do this when the child is home for a couple of days, at least a weekend. And also, we're going to talk more about this, but the child's going to be more successful if they're not wearing anything from the waist down. So of course, that would be kind of difficult to do in winter months. That's another reason why we said summer. Azrin and Fox also suggest not wearing anything from the waist down when toilet training, especially when you're in those first intervals, like 15, 20, 30-minute intervals. You would really want to focus on toileting. Why should a child be naked from the waist down? Or, and if that's not possible, wearing super loose, light-fitting clothing? Why? That's because the child, you're going to be able to see that accident happening more immediately. You're going to be able to respond to the accident faster than you would if that child was wearing pants. So you want to help that whole procedure. You also want to make sure that the child doesn't feel some comfort as they feel when they're wearing diapers. That pressure that the diaper gives them, if they're wearing tight clothing or a tight underwear, that might signal to them that it's okay to urinate where you are. So if they're not wearing anything, that's a signal, and through experience, they're going to learn that that's not as comfortable, and that, there are intervals where they're going to go to the bathroom and they're going to start to gravitate towards those intervals, if that makes sense. So their behavior is going to be, and of course, because of reinforcement also, but all of this is going to help the child be more successful. Francine, do you have anything else to add to?
Yeah, I agree with you completely. And I think parents are often very eager to put their child in underwear, especially if the child is motivated by certain characters that might be on the underwear. But I encourage parents whenever possible to really work naked from the waist down, or at least in loose clothing, because that underwear will mimic the sensation of wearing a diaper, which is very confusing for children in the early stages of potty training.
Especially those training underwears that are extra padded and so comfy, they kind of feel just like a diaper. So it's hard. And obviously the pull-ups, a lot of parents already they bought the pull-ups. They said, my kid's already wearing pull-ups and they're all excited about it. And it's your job to kind of tell them, hey, we're going to try it a different way. And this is why. So when you're starting a new schedule, you want to start, like Francine said, with observing how the child is before you started during baseline. We typically start at a 15 or 20-minute interval, and we're taking that child every 20 minutes or whatever the interval is. We're taking the child every X minutes. We're increasing the liquid intake. This is going to allow for the child to have more opportunities to urinate, and it's going to give you more opportunities to teach. If the child's not drinking enough, there's less teaching opportunities. So you're going to want to offer their favorite drinks, all of it. It can be chocolate milk, juice. This is very exciting. They're going to have free access to all the things that they love drinking. If they don't like to drink too much, then you're going to offer things like ice pops, and whatever else you can get the child to consume that is liquid. Some kids only drink water or don't drink water. Whatever it is their choice, you want to offer that. Sometimes, if the child's not drinking a lot, you can offer something like potato chips and makes you thirsty, so then you'll start drinking more. And just try different ways to increase motivation to drink, and drinking will cause more urination and therefore more opportunities to teach. You want to decrease other demands, especially when you start toilet training. You don't want to be going to the toilet every 15 minutes and then doing intensive instruction in between. Keep it light, let the child, this is totally new for them. And you want to put everything else kind of on pause while you're toilet training. And the idea is that this moves quickly. You're not toilet training for months on end. You should see progress session to session. And you're putting things on pause. That's a temporary situation. It's not that the child's going to lose learning. They're going to learn something that's going to change their lives, being toilet trained, and it's going to give them more time to learn new things once they're done with this. Create a criterion for fading out of the schedule. So know when you're moving from 15 minutes to 25 minutes. Plan this out. For me, I personally do, okay, once the child has urinated 3 consecutive times in the toilet, and in between those, there were no accidents, I'm going to increase X minutes. Maybe it's just 5 minutes, maybe it's 10 minutes, could be 13 minutes. You're going to choose, and you're going to analyze and see if the data shows that the child's continuing to make progress and change as you go, as you need to go. But make some criterion that you can follow and that everybody's aware of on the team so that everybody can make those decisions in their sessions.
Right. And like Kristen said, this starting of the toilet train is very short term. We're really doing these things just the first few days until they start building some momentum and having success and progress. So we are putting everything else on pause. And something I've often seen is parents will say, well, he only really drinks a lot out of a bottle, or he only really drinks a lot out of a sippy cup, and we're really trying to not give it to him or only give it to him at certain times of the day. During phase 1 of potty training, give the bottle, give the sippy cup. You don't want to reintroduce something you've already faded, but if it's something that's still in the life of the child and it's something that's going to increase their fluid intake, allow them access to it while in the initial stage of potty training. All right, Kristen, you want to tell us about the procedures?
So procedures, you're going to set a timer. Okay, so you arrive at the child's house or the child arrives at school, you're setting a timer. Well, I would first take them to the bathroom before you start the timer. So take them to the bathroom, then you're going to start the timer. Okay, you start the timer, say it's 30 minutes. You're watching the child very closely. They're probably naked from the waist down, so you're watching to catch any accidents that could potentially happen. It says wearing light clothing, but preferably that's like the second option. They're either naked from the waist down or they're wearing very loose, light clothes. Okay, this is so that you can be more aware and respond quickly, and also for them too. So you're going to then, when the timer rings, take the child to the bathroom. This could also, maybe not in the first couple of days, but eventually this could be an opportunity for you to teach demand for bathroom. This could be a sign, this could be a vocal command, this could be a peck, right? But you can just physically prompt or vocally give an echoic prompt for the child to say the word or communicate the word bathroom or potty only if it's a younger child. We don't want to teach potty to 10-year-olds. And have them verbalize that they are going to the bathroom. So those are the first 2-3 steps, okay? You're bringing the child to the bathroom. The child removes their own pants and sits independently, okay? If the child is not yet doing those things, you're going to help them. But if the child is capable of doing it, you're going to give minimal prompts. The adult is present in the bathroom or near the bathroom, but is neutral and not entertaining and engaging with the child while they're in the bathroom. The child's going to sit for up to 5 minutes on the toilet. An adult is waiting. The adult is there to supervise and to make sure the child is safe. They're attending to any sound or sight of the urine trickling. You could sit on the floor or on a chair and wait for the child, but you're not doing hand games and singing songs and playing with the child, hugging the child. You're letting that child experience what it is to use the bathroom as independently as possible. And doing all of those other things could reinforce the absence of urinating. You want to be very clear what the objective is. So that's why I say the adult is present but neutral. You're not there for entertainment. You're not there to make this super fun. You're really there to supervise and be waiting for that success so that you can reinforce immediately. There are two things that could happen. If a child urinates, you're going to provide immediate reinforcement, not while they're urinating, when they're done urinating. Provide reinforcement, preferably once they've stood up and pulled their pants up, but you could also do that right after you hear the finishing of the urination in the toilet. You're gonna avoid praising and reinforcing mid-pee is what I put here on the slides. So make sure you wait for the child. You don't want to startle them or cut their urination and they don't finish because you got so excited. Be sure to let them finish. So that's the success, right? They peed in the potty, you caught them in an interval where they're going in the toilet, they get reinforced, it's super awesome. They want it, it was a great positive experience. And that reinforcement is going to increase the likelihood that this behavior occurs again in the future. If the child sat for 5 minutes and did not have a success, you're not going to give a verbal consequence. You're not going to give them reinforcement and say, oh, you can have the M&M because you tried. I love how you sat for so long. No, there's no reinforcement for just sitting. That has to be clear. There is no social attention either. This should just be a non-event. They sat for 5 minutes, nothing happened, and therefore nothing happened. So you're not going to make this like super fun and do other things to make this confusing. Make it very clear that peeing on the potty is a party and sitting there and not peeing is a non-event. So respond to the child in that way. Anything else, Francine?
Yeah, I find that it's very helpful to use a script for this. So if the child is not successful, I always very neutrally say, nice try, wash hands, right? So where nice try is ending the sitting on the bathroom, and then you're giving the next directive, which is wash hands, because we're always teaching proper hygiene. They had been on the toilet. We want them to wash their hands. They wash the hands, they exit the bathroom. And I think also it's notable to talk about the up to 5 minutes. So the 5 minutes is really the max of trying and sitting, because if you have the child sit for longer, eventually at some point they will urinate, but we're not teaching them to sit and urinate in that particular moment. So I would say it's really about 2 to 5 minutes. That's the appropriate window. And what I say to parents or families that the child is either in distress or restless when sitting, to think of a activity. I like counting to 100 or singing the same exact song every time, or using Spotify or some music app on your phone and playing the exact same song every time they sit. That is about 2.5 minutes long, so that they have a clear indicator of the beginning and the end of the sitting interval. So they know by the time song XYZ is over, if I have not urinated, I could get off the toilet and go out. And that song or that activity becomes much less reinforcing, because you're doing the exact same thing every time. So it's not a distractor to the child from doing what they're supposed to be doing while they're on the toilet. You're on mute.
This is the second poll question. The question is, as soon as the child sits on the toilet, provide reinforcement. So is this true? Make sitting on the toilet a reinforcer, or false? Reinforcement should be immediately after voiding in the toilet. What do you guys think? True or false? All right, a lot of you have answered. And about 93% of you have said false, and that is the correct answer. You are reinforcing after the child voids, not after they sit. All right. Thank you, everybody, for participating. You guys are awesome. And it's our first code. This is the code that you're going to need for the survey. The survey is going to go in the chat at the end of the webinar. The first code is environment. Write down the code, jot it down, text it to yourself. You need it for the survey, and you need to click on the survey link to get the certificate. So please remember to click on the link when I post that in the chat. You need that, you need the link and this code, okay? So you have until Friday, March 10th, 9 a.m. to complete the survey. Code 1, environment. Moving on.
Okay, we're going to talk about behavioral concerns, because very often we run into these roadblocks when we're working on toilet training. And the first one that we see most often is bathroom avoidance. And And this tends to happen once the child starts understanding what we're trying to teach them. They know, oh, I have to go to the bathroom and I'm going to have to sit on the toilet and I'm going to have to avoid. And that's something I don't want to do. So if I just don't go to the bathroom, then I'm not going to have to sit on the toilet and I'm going to get to stay and play and continue to have fun. So some children might cry or become distressed when they are asked to enter into the bathroom. So for those children, we want to initially target bathroom behavior, which is entering the bathroom and sitting on the toilet. And we might need to break that down into a pre-toilet training program that we run before we're actually running the toilet training program, which might look like just approaching the bathroom and standing at the bathroom door and then getting reinforced for entering into the bathroom without necessarily having to sit first. So we're going to be shaping that behavior until they are successfully able to sit on the toilet without any resistance, avoidance, or distress by reinforcing the sitting behavior before we even focus on having them urinate. So that would be one of our frequently encountered concerns that we want to address before we start tackling the actual toilet training. The next behavioral concern is refusing to disrobe or undress. So this is something that you might encounter during phase 1 when you're initially toilet training, or you can encounter it later on once we're adding on clothing. And it really depends on the level of the child's comfort with the naked from the waist down. Some children feel very comfortable naked from the waist down, and it works very well for them. And other children really feel very uncomfortable with it. It's unnatural to them and it causes a lot of distress. So with those children that are not comfortable naked from the waist down, we do recommend loose clothing. I would just say a loose pair of shorts and nothing else. No underwear under the shorts, nothing tight fitting. If you don't have shorts, or if some children are distressed about wearing short pants, it makes them feel uncomfortable, loose fitting pants would work fine too. Now, when they enter the bathroom, but they don't remove their pants themselves and they don't allow you to remove their pants for them, you want to first target that. And that's also a skill that you could work alongside the physical therapist or the occupational therapist if that's a physical or a motor goal that they're working on, removing and pulling up and down their pants, and then shaping that behavior first before we start working on the toilet training. Because in order to be independently toilet trained, a child needs to be able to pull down their pants and then get themselves onto the toilet so that they're successfully able to use the toilet without urinating on themselves or on their clothing before putting their clothing back on. And then another one is that avoidance or escaping from the toilet. And that's really for the kids that you're able to get into the bathroom. They might love the bath, they might love the sink, they might not have any issue being in the physical room, but they have a lot of discomfort or really don't enjoy sitting on the toilet. So we want to shape the sitting on the toilet behavior, and that's when we start introducing the interval and how do they know how long that they're going to have to sit on the toilet. So if a child really likes doing the alphabet, we could use the alphabet and say we're going to do the alphabet 3 times, or we're going to count to this number, or we're going to sing this song. And that's how they're going to have a predictable beginning and end to their sitting. And it could be the adult that's doing the counting or that's doing the singing. It doesn't necessarily have to be the child, but we want to give the child an indicator eventually of how long they're going to have to sit. And we start doing this really by just getting them to sit, even if it's just for a few seconds. And then we're gradually increasing the interval until they're sitting without any type of escape behaviors for the full 2 to 5 minutes. Okay, accidents, Kristen.
Yes, that's mine. Okay, accidents. So what happens if a child has an accident? That's going to happen. So we need to be prepared. As soon as you see the accident starting to occur, you're going to probably physically prompt them into the bathroom because that's going to be the fastest way to get them there. The idea is that they can complete voiding in the toilet and not urinate only onto the floor or on themselves. The idea is that you're going to try to get them onto the toilet as quick as possible, and that's why they're closer to the bathroom or inside the bathroom. For children who have strong listener behavior, it would make sense to say a neutral statement such as pee in the potty, and instead of making it a really fun ritual and song and a hug and all those things, it should be neutral. It should just be an instruction, pee in the potty, or we pee in the potty. There are no explanations that accidents are okay. Also, don't show the opposite. Don't show your disappointment, and it really should be neutral. We're not trying to punish or reinforce. We're just trying to make this a non-event and a correction. You're giving them a correction. You're rushing them to the bathroom. They're sitting on the toilet and they have an opportunity to get reinforced for finishing on the toilet. They may receive reinforcement after peeing on the potty, especially in the beginning. Later on, you might choose to not reinforce finishing off their accident into the toilet. You might just decide, I'm only going to reinforce full urinations on the toilet, especially when they start spontaneously visiting the bathroom and going on the toilet themselves. If you rush the child to the bathroom, they don't finish on the toilet, there also shouldn't be a social consequence or any type of special consequence for not making it onto the toilet on time, okay? We're really focusing on reinforcement to teaching this new skill. Remember, we're teaching a new behavior. To teach new behaviors, you need reinforcement, okay? Accidents don't warrant punishment. They also don't warrant reinforcement. There shouldn't be anything tangible or social about making an accident. I wanted to also just quickly talk about some clients that I've had when toilet training that they were a little bit older, and I think they were just their life history has taught them to pee in a certain place or in a certain position. Also with bowel movements, that happens, right? So some therapists have come to me, and I'm thinking of one specifically who said, Kristen, he's purposely having accidents. We just left the bathroom and he pees, and he's doing it on purpose. And I'm like, okay, let's really look at this. And is he doing this on purpose, or has he never peed in this hole, right? Has he never put his bare bottom into this hole and released his urine into a toilet? Is this so brand new to him that he's actually holding it, not to ruin your day, but he's holding it when he's on the toilet because that's what he's done his whole life. And he's already 7 years old or 6 years old or 5 years old, and he's never done it another way. So yeah, it's going to take a little bit more of your perseverance and your follow through and catching those intervals, making the right intervals for this child, but they're not doing it. They're probably not doing this to ruin your day or to be spiteful of the plan. They have no idea that that's what they're supposed to do. So you're trying to catch a couple of moments in their lifetime where they actually do release into the toilet, and it's going to be the best thing they've ever experienced. So just want to let you know, because I think I also saw some questions in the Q&A, but I've definitely experienced this several times. I'm sure Francine also has. Yes, that's a little bit about accidents. And I've been talking about reinforcement. Most of you are BCBAs, so you know what reinforcement is, but just so that we can apply this to toileting, positive reinforcement is a stimulus, and we're not going to define which stimuli those are. It's a stimulus provided contingent on a behavior. What's the behavior we're talking about? Urinating, voiding in the toilet. That will increase the likelihood that a behavior will happen again in the future. So we are increasing the likelihood that peeing in the potty is going to happen in the future.
Sorry about that.
It's okay. So the alternative behavior, which is peeing in your clothes or peeing on the floor, is not getting reinforced. So if you're thinking about matching law, right, there are two choices, there are two behaviors. The child's either going to pee in the toilet or pee on the floor or on the bed or on the sofa. When the peeing in the toilet is reinforced over time and through learning opportunities, the child is going to learn that peeing in the toilet is going to happen more, it's just going to happen more often because it's getting reinforced. And by definition, if you have a reinforcer, it should increase in frequency. And peeing on self or peeing on floor should decrease in frequency, just by by definition of the matching law, right? The behavior shouldn't continue at higher rates if you've identified a reinforcer. Think about your child. What is that child's reinforcers? Make that reinforcer something special that only gets delivered upon peeing on the potty, and that child doesn't have access to that item or activity during the rest of the day. Maybe that child is not allowed to have sweets, but okay, talk to the parents, say, listen, this child hasn't ever had sweets. This is going to work really great. Let's just save a half a gummy or a Skittle or a marshmallow or whatever it is for toilet training. Probably they're only going to have a couple a day. It's not going to be very significant in their sugar intake. If you don't have to use candy, that's just an example of, especially kids who don't have access to candy, that's going to be like, wow, major reward, major motivator. Other things I've used are bubbles. Kids love bubbles. What other things? Francine, what are some reinforcers that you've used?
Yeah, it depends on the kid. I try to use attention as often as possible. With high fives, special time tickles, playing a favorite game after they come out of the bathroom. So, if there's some preferred activity, going right to that preferred activity right after they have had success is really great. And then exactly like what you said, I love those mini M&Ms because they're so teeny tiny. Those seem to be really good reinforcers as well.
Yeah, those are great. Definitely a lot of kids, that social interaction is going to work really well, and it's going to be a party every time they go in the toilet. So perfect. And there's another poll. This is our third poll. When a child has an accident, make sure to show your disapproval and your disappointment. I'm going to launch that right now. Let's see what you guys have to say. True or false? You need to show your disapproval. Is that true or is it false? Well, 98% have said false. So thank you everybody for responding. I love that all of you are participating and so into this. I see the Q&A box growing. I think we're going to have to respond to some of these questions on social media just because I want to get to all of them. Perfect. All right, we're going to move on.
Okay, so we're going to talk about accidentally reinforcing, which is something that happens more frequently than we hope, but we want to try to avoid that because sometimes something might happen that is naturally occurring that might actually reinforce the accident rather than reinforce the behavior that we're working towards, which is avoiding in the toilet. So what might be happening? What might be occurring in the home or in the school environment after an accident occurs? Often parents rush the child to be cleaned and they get to take a bath. And many children love taking a bath. So if they're getting a bath right after an accident, that's actually reinforcing the accident. The attention, a child being picked up, a child being yelled at. Oh no, not again. A lot of attention being given to the accident that could reinforce the accident. A parent saying something like pee pee goes in the potty, look, potty, pee, potty. Or if they start singing a potty song or reading a potty book, that's reinforcing it. The parent's tone or the teacher's tone or the therapist's tone when an accident occurs. So the neutral tone about an accident is really important. We want to acknowledge that an accident occurred, but we're just using a neutral flat affect and describing it. You had an accident, P has to go in the potty, right? We're not getting overly excited. We're not giving it a lot of attention. We're very matter of fact about what happened when the accident occurred. And then what ends up happening with cleaning up the accident. So is the child involved in cleaning up the accident and that seems fun to the child? Is the child given an iPad or a favorite toy to entertain the child while the parent cleans up the accident? So we have to be very cognizant of what we're doing when an accident occurs to avoid that situation from reinforcing the accident, not actually the behavior that we're working towards. So this is what like a sample data sheet would look like when we are in a potty training phase. If you could see here, we're on a 20-minute interval and we're recording. So we sat down at 4 o'clock. Nothing happened. The child was prompted. We sat down again at 4:20. There was urine, and that was an accident. So I guess they didn't make it to sit down at the 4:20, and they had an accident. They were prompted to the bathroom. Again at 4:40, nothing happened. And then at 5 o'clock, they had success with prompting. And then shortly after that, at 5:20, they had a bowel movement. That was an accident. So you see how you can record, you want to record what actually happened, nothing, a bowel movement or urination. Was it an accident or a success? Because remember, urine or a bowel movement can occur in the correct or incorrect place. And then you want to indicate whether it was prompted or spontaneous. Spontaneous means that the child indicated or went on their own. So the child might point to the bathroom. That's a spontaneous, even if they need some support along the way, especially in the training phase. And when we talk about criterion, I love the rule of three consecutive successes, and then we would increase the interval. So we might go from 20 minutes to 30 minutes or 20 minutes to 25 minutes, depending on the child's baseline. And then here is that 30-minute interval where now we're doing half an hour and we're taking similar type of data. Okay, so I'm just going to recap about some of the best practices that we discussed, and then Kristen, you want to jump in here too as well. So in phase 1, when we're initiating potty training, we want to increase liquids until they are having success. How do we determine success? We determine success with 3 successes, and then we're increasing the criteria, and then we want, again, 3 successes in a row. So if we're doing it with 20-minute intervals, we want 3 successes at 20-minute intervals, and then we're going to increase to 30 minutes. We want 3 successes at 30 minutes before we go to 45 minutes. And during that first phase, we want to keep the high amounts of liquid until we get to the 2-hour mark. And then we could start going back to natural levels of liquid. We want to remove the diaper during waking hours. So we really are only targeting the time that the child is awake. Usually the child is no longer napping at the stage that we are doing potty training, but occasionally we are potty training children who still nap. We are taking the diaper or the pull-up off upon waking. So we could either do that in the bedroom or have the child go right to the bathroom. When they wake up, the pull-up or the diaper goes right into the garbage, and it does not go back on again until right before they go back into their bed or go down to take a nap. They're wearing loose-fitting clothing or preferably bare bottom. We're teaching them or making sure that they know how to pull up and pull down their pants and get on the toilet. Remember, not all toilets are the same height. So some children might need a step stool. Some children might need a seat cover, especially if they have any anxiety about falling into the toilet. So we want to make sure that the toilet feels comfortable for the particular child that you're working with. We want to avoid entertaining the child while they're on the toilet. It's a bathroom. It's a place of business. We go in there to take care of business, and then we leave for the entertainment. So we don't want to turn the toilet into a couch. And I know that sounds a little bit silly, but they're really sitting there for an intended activity, not for an endless amount of time until it just naturally happens. We want to avoid introducing reinforcers while they're sitting. We want the reinforcer to be limited for the success. And we want to make sure that we're clearly targeting voiding in the toilet as that is what we're reinforcing. So we want to avoid accidentally reinforcing the wrong thing. Okay, Kristen, do you want to do dry checks or you want me to?
Yeah, we only have a couple minutes. So some people have asked about this question in the Q&A box. So this is great. People are asking, should we reinforce the child for staying dry? Yes, these are called dry checks. You want to praise the child for their success on the toilet, but you also want to celebrate the fact that they've not had accidents. So you're reinforcing the absence of an accident. Every 5 to 10 minutes, you can have the child look down, you can prompt them to touch their underwear if they're wearing underwear or shorts, or just look, simply if they're naked from the waist down, you can point and you can have them look and then say something like, wow, you are dry, great job. and make this super reinforcing. You can use a lot of social reinforcement here. You're going to tell them what they did well using behavior specific praise, and make sure that you are reinforcing them throughout and they're having access to your attention in regards to toilet training throughout the day.
Right.
So that's
Absolutely.
Chris.
Right. We're looking for them to void in the toilet and stay dry when they're not on the toilet. So those are the behaviors that we're reinforcing. All right, Kristen, take it away with the data analysis.
All right, I've got a little bit of time. So I typically graph frequency. You can see that the bolded line are the successes and the dotted lines are the accidents. We're keeping track. If we see a trend like this graph, we're going to continue. There's not enough data to make any changes because we see that, yes, there are more successes and there are fewer accidents. We should continue because it seems like things are going well, but we don't have enough information to change the intervention yet. In the next graph, you're going to see also the same thing. There is an increasing trend for successes and a decreasing trend for accidents, the dotted line. I would continue here. It's not clear that the child has made the progress that we need to change criterions, so continue. Next graph. This would be a decision to stop, in my opinion, because we see that the successes are very close now to the accidents and they've been decreasing for quite a few sessions. You might want to reevaluate here and maybe increase the interval.
Right. And this is a whole nother presentation on bowel movement. So we're just going to very quickly talk about that. We want to target urination prior to targeting bowel movements. Even though we're not targeting bowel movements, you want to collect data on bowel movements while you're targeting urination. Bowel movements occur at a much lower frequency than urination. And sometimes bowel movements will be trained while you're training urination by default. So sometimes when they're sitting to urinate, the momentum of the urination actually moves along a bowel movement and a child's able to have a bowel movement while urinating. So that is something that you want to look into, you want to track, even if you're not targeting it. Before we start targeting bowel movements, we want to ensure that the child is regular. And if they are irregular, we want to address any issues with constipation before initiating bowel movement training, because that could become a bigger challenge and lead to withholding if the child experiences any kind of pain or discomfort when trying to pass a bowel movement. We also, have to address the fact that some children are accustomed to having bowel movements in certain positions like squatting or standing, and that is something to take into consideration when working on bowel movement training.